Good morning, guys. This is your password for today. For the password, guys, there is no spaces between them. It's dry cough 00, capital D, capital C. So which class of drugs causes cough? Which one does not? Okay, everybody agrees? Right, so the ACE inhibitors are the one that cause the cough, the dry cough, right? Okay. What about the others, renin and the renin inhibitors and the ARBs? They don't. Why is that? What is the mechanism by which the ACE inhibitors cause dry cough? Can you say that again?
All right. So ACE, they basically what they do is that they break down the bradykinin and the prostaglandin consequently. So if you inhibit that enzyme, your bradykinin and prostaglandin will increase, which also causes the dry cough.
Excellent. Everybody get that? Yeah, you deserve it. Go for it. Everybody get that? Okay. Say it one more time. Can somebody else say it? I can't say it as good as she did. So can someone explain why the ACE inhibitors cause dry cough, but the other ones do not? Okay, Arnold. I'm sorry. You're not Arnold, are you? You are? Okay.
Hello, testing? Okay. Well, typically the ACE breaks down this thing called bradykinin or kinin. How do you say it?
Yeah, whatever you said.
Bradykinin. And with the ACE inhibitors, you can't break down bradykinin anymore. And that also leads to the synthesis of more prostaglandins, and both together basically create a dry cough.
Excellent. Yay. Excellent. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. So anybody is not at the start screen? If you're not start screen, can you raise your hand up high? One. Can you please raise it high so I can count? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, you still have some, plenty. Okay. So which of the diuretics are most efficacious? Shh. I'm trying to teach you some tricks for the rats. Okay, so which of the diuretics is the most efficacious? I can't hear you. All right. Why is it? Why is that? Why? Okay, everybody bring the mic. Somebody is scared. You can say it.
There are more reabsorption in the loop.
There are more. That's where water is mostly reabsorbed, right? In the loop. Repeat the question again. Okay. Which of the diuretics is the most efficacious? Loop diuretics, because you know how the water gets excreted. I mean, okay, so the water gets excreted into these tubules, proximal, distal, and then all these. So the part where the water gets mostly reabsorbed is at the loop. Okay, so if you block the absorption of the water at that site, at the loop, then you get the most effect. You get the most diuretic effect, okay? So the loop diuretics are the most efficacious. Now, does that make them the most potent too? No, you better say no. Because there is a difference between efficacy and potency, okay? Remember? Efficacy, potency, they're not related, okay? Okay, let me, Melody. Which one is the most potent? I don't know. Well, I know among the class itself, among the loop diuretics, which one is the most potent? Potent. Something to mind, bumetanide, right? Because if you compare the two, the bumetanide has a butyl group, and it was found to bind the strongest with the receptor, so it's the most potent, okay? So bumetanide is actually the most potent. Ithacrenic acid. What is unique about ithacrenic acid? It's bad. That's true. It's bad. That's right. Why is it bad? It causes ototoxicity. Okay. Does it have a sulfur group? Ithacrenic acid? Does it? No. It's actually the only one among all these diuretics that does not have a sulfur group, right? So that's the only attractive part of this drug. So if somebody's allergic to sulfur and you really want to give them diuretic, guess what? Then you could go with the ithacrenic acid. But problem with the ithacrenic acid is that it is the least potent. Okay, so you have to watch out for the possibility of some ototoxicity. Okay, so whenever you get that, you should monitor the patient. Yes. Ithacrenic acid. Oh, ithacrenic acid. Okay. Yes, Melody. Okay, so among the loop diuretics, which are this class of diuretics is the most efficacious, okay? The most potent one is bumetanide, okay? The least potent is ithacrenic acid. Now, besides the fact that it is the least potent, which means you will have to give more amount of the drug, it leads to some side effects. Most important ones are ototoxicity, okay? So why do we have it then? Why is it, why do we still use ithacrenic acid? Because it's the only one that is not a sulfur drug. So when you have people who are allergic to sulfur, which we will explain the sulfur allergy because they are different. Anyway, so if you have somebody who's allergic to the sulfur, then ithacrenic acid will be safe. I mean, not safe, but in terms of allergy, then you could use that as an option. But then if you do that, you should monitor the patient for any signs of ototoxicity. Okay, are you ready to start now? If you're not, can you raise your hand? I know. Okay. Okay. Does anybody else not ready? Let me see. If you are not ready, can you raise your hand up high? How many people are not ready to take the rat? Vivian, you're ready? No? Okay, so Melody, could you please go at the table over there? I'll bring you a copy, okay? Do you think it's going to work, Vivian? Okay. You think it's going to work? Okay. Just wait until I give the sign. Are you there, Vivian? You are? Okay, guys, let me set the timer. There is 10 questions. I'm gonna give you 12 minutes just in case. I think they should be easy ones, hopefully. Let me set the timer and then you could go ahead and start when in a minute. Okay, go ahead and start. Good luck. Okay, you can go ahead and start working as a team while I set the timer. Thank you. Okay, so starting with the first question, ARBs were designed such that they mimic the transition state of the cleavage of the angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Well, no, it's false. Which technique has this been used for? The ACE inhibitor. So what's the mechanism of action of the ARBs? They block the receptor, okay, not the enzyme. Okay. Question number 2. Which class of drugs causes no electrolyte loss? We all know it's D, right? What's wrong with the other ones? Right, so loop diuretics, they cause electrolyte misbalance, right? Potassium sparing diuretics, they also have some issues. They cause loss of, what is it, sodium, I think? No, not the sodium. Anyway, so they all cause some imbalance in the electrolyte. The only ones that would cause the release of the water alone is the antidiuretic hormone antagonists. And these actually belong to a class of not diuretics, they are called aquaretics, okay? So make sure you know the difference between these definitions. There's a difference between aquaretic and diuretic, okay? Aquaretic will not affect the electrolyte balance, while diuretic will, okay? Okay, and then next one, the structural feature responsible for the test disturbance side effect of the captopril is the one highlighted in the figure, the carboxyl. Is this right? Well, no, it's false. Which one it is? Yep, the sulfhydryl right here. What other issues that are caused by this sulfhydryl group? Rash, right? And duration of action. Because this drug, because of this sulfhydryl group, it binds to other proteins. It gets, dimerized, so it's not active anymore. So it's actually given more often. It has a short duration of action. Okay. Question number 4. The feature responsible for the greater selectivity of the eplerenone to the mineralocorticoid receptor compared to the spironolactone is, well, no, it's C, right? The epoxy group. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Number 5. Which of the following? Kendra, you have a question? Uh-huh. Okay. Number 5. Which one of the following loop diuretics is most potent? We already answered this before the rat, right? Okay. Number 6. Among the ACE inhibitors, captopril has the shortest duration of action. True, it is, which is not convenient. It has to be taken 3 times a day. Number 7. Which of the following is not a prodrug? We all know it's C. Why? Why is lisinopril not a prodrug? Yes, it has a lysine group and it's positively charged, but it balances the negative charge. And that's the hypothesis, okay? The hypothesis that they come up with is they believe the positive charge neutralizes the negative charge, so the drug now is, 0 charged, and then it can, cross the GIT. The other ones have negative charge, carboxyl group, so we had to modify it by adding an ester to help it get absorbed past the GI, and then over there's esterase enzymes. They break down the drug back to the active form. Yes, sir. Say it again. Uh-huh. Is it a prodrug? Okay, so hydrochlorothiazide, is it a prodrug, hydrochlorothiazide? No. So I guess your concern is if you combine these two, does that make it a prodrug? I mean, when we define a product, we're talking about one drug. Normally, it's not a combination, okay? So I'm not trying to trick you, except in the cats. Question number 8. Yeah, you have a question? Somebody was raising hand? Yes, ma'am. Say it again. Oh, so most the ACE inhibitor except captopril and lisinopril, they have carboxyl group, so they are ionized most of the time, so they cannot cross the gut wall. Okay, cannot be absorbed. So we use a product to help with that. So we solve the problem with the absorption. Okay, what diuretic drug is expected to be safe to use with someone who has sulfonamide allergy? Well, no, it's ethacrylic acid because it's the only one that doesn't have sulfa. How do we know? Well, check the structure. Do you see any sulfa in here? No, good, see? Very easy. All right. The reason for designing ACE inhibitors as prodrugs is to enhance their absorption, right? Well, we all agree on that. Unlike the ACE inhibitor, ARBs and renin inhibitors do not cause dry cough. We all know that, okay? Okay, any issues with this? Any issues? Okay, so let's start with the first application. Do you need a break? Okay, so let's take 7.5 minutes break. Come here at 9:45, okay? 9:45, and then we'll start with the applications. Okay, guys, so we'll start with the diuretic and aquaretics. So start with exercise number 1 and 2. It's a matching exercise, and then we'll discuss together. So work on both 1 and 2, okay? So let's say 5 minutes, and then if you need more time, we'll give you more time, okay? Start with working on exercise 1 and 2, and we'll discuss. Yes. You guys need more time? Are you ready? Okay, we're gonna start discussion. If you need more time, can you let me know? You ready? Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna call on a team and then see what they matched each one with, and then we'll discuss, okay? What? You wanna go first? I don't think so. You picked the easy one, right? Okay, so I'm gonna use my own random number generator, okay? Team number 5, where's team number 5? Okay, oh, next to me. So number 1, what's the right answer for number 1? We're talking about exercise number 1, okay? So eplerenone, C, avoid combining with a potent inhibitor to the CYP3A4. Why is that? Why should we avoid the combination of a potent inhibitor to the enzyme CYP3A4 if we are given eplerenone? Because it's the enzyme used in metabolizing this drug, right? Okay, so if you inhibit the enzyme, what happens to the drug? Overdose, and then you get, what's the side effects for the eplerenone and the spironolactone? Sexual side effects. Why is that? Because they mimic, if you look at the structure, it's a nucleus, it's an steroid structure, right? So they mimic the other, steroids, and they can actually affect these receptors as well. Can you name a potent inhibitor to the CYP3A4? Example on drugs that ketoconazole and clarithromycin. Okay. Okay. Team number 9, ethacrenic acid. Where's team number 9? Yeah. E, that's correct. So ethacrenic acid is the least potent, and like we explained, why do we even have it? Why can we use it? Because it is not sulfonamide. So only we have somebody who's allergic to sulfonamide, we can use it. Okay. The side effect is autotoxicity. Okay. Team number 12. What's team number 12? So mannitol, IV only. Okay. Why is that? Why can I be taken orally? Is it because it's broken down? It's highly polar, right? So it cannot cross the gut wall, so it can only be given, IV. Okay. What's the mechanism of action of mannitol? How do they work? So mannitol is like sugar, right? So the sugar, when it's whether in the intestine or in the urine, it increases the osmolality of these fluids, and then the water gets attracted wherever there is high concentration of these drugs. Okay, make sense? Let's see, team number, Kendra, yes. Mechanism of action. Okay, so mannitol is polar. When it's excreted, it stays in the urine, and it does not get reabsorbed. Okay, when it stays in the urine, it increases the osmolality. You know what's osmolality? It's like the concentration of things in the urine. So now the urine is concentrated, so it's hard for the water to leave. So it attracts the water, and then more water leaves. Okay. Okay. Team number 17. What is 17? Okay. Bumetanide. Huh? What is it? B, highest efficacy among all its group. That's right. So it's the most efficacious among the loop diuretics, okay? And the fact that a drug is most efficacious is useful, like the loop diuretics is useful in the case when you have a chronic kidney problem, okay? When the glomerular filtration rate, the GFR, below 40, then we try to use these strong diuretics. Does that make sense? Can someone repeat or explain what I just said? Why do we go with things like the loop diuretics or most potent, like bumetanide, when we have a chronic kidney condition, when you have the glomerular filtration rate? What is the glomerular filtration rate? I know you probably have never seen that. Glomerular filtration rate basically is a measure how much the glomerular, which is part of the kidney, how much the rate of filtration, how much water it actually excretes. If this rate goes below 40, then that's very bad. So we go with the strongest, most efficacious diuretics. In this case, we use loop diuretic, and the most potent among all the loop diuretics is bumetanide. Make sense, guys? So it's among the group of the most efficacious group. So all these groups have the same efficacy, but besides the efficacy, this is the most potent. So it's, if you want to go with something that is most efficacious and most potent, then bumetanide. I'm not sure about, compared to the other group, compared to other drugs in other classes, I'm not sure about potency, if it's the most potent or not, but it's definitely the most efficacious. Now, within the same loop diuretics, it is the most potent, okay? So,
is it newer and still not generic, or is it just because it's so potent that it's not the first thing? I mean, I haven't been exposed to
that's a good question.
years, so I don't know.
Okay.
Today in the hospital, that may be what they stick everyone on.
Right.
But
Right. So guys, you will, so you will see that sometimes you see a drug that's, like has the best features, okay? Yet we sometimes tend to use drugs that has more history of being safe, okay? The drugs that's, like for example, we talk about Benadryl, right? Because it's very safe. We didn't have any problems with it. So, I mean, relatively. So although we have some other alternatives, but it's still commonly used. So you will see furosemide used more often, okay? But then when it comes to somebody who has a chronic kidney failure, okay, then you want to go with something that is most potent, then you would choose bumetanide. Why not going with the bumetanide directly? Honestly, I'm not sure why. It's not commonly prescribed. I haven't seen it, much prescribed. But my guess would be it's probably does not have the same, I guess, enough studies, or historical, I guess, history where it convinced people that it is safe.
So what you said, so we cannot use this one for kidney failure?
So yes, you can. I'm saying bumetanide is most potent. So yes, we do use it in cases where you have the GFR below 40. Okay. Questions about this, guys? Yes. What do you think? So we would actually, I mean, in theory you could, but that's not the best option. The best option to go with drug that is most potent, such as bumetanide. We also have two more drugs that are potent, which is indapamide and metalazone. Okay, so these two drugs. So there are three drugs listed in the notes that are used in case of chronic renal failure, where the GFR is below 40. Bumetanide, indapamide, and metalazone. Okay, so when we have the GFR below 40, we go with a strong diuretic. Okay?
I mean, this may be beyond the scope of today, but how do these affect like creatinine clearance? Like, are they safer
Okay. I can't remember now. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I know the VA is most likely to put furosemide, but it may be the same thing that, or at least they used to be that way. And then my wife's father is on furosemide, so I'm assuming that that's still what they do, but that may be that they found that phosphorus, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
I have no idea.
Sure.
I know things,
Okay.
but I also haven't had exposure to certain things in years. So
Okay. All right. Team number 4. Where's team number 4? Okay. 12 at 10. Of course, it's the last one on the list. A. So it's preferred for hyponatremia. Why is that? Does it cause electrolyte imbalance? Does it affect the balance of electrolyte? No. So when you have someone who you want to give them diuretic, but they have hyponatremia, so you do not want to go with a diuretic that would increase the loss of the sodium. Okay. So what is hyponatremia? You have less sodium in the blood. So your goal is to pick a diuretic that does not make things worse, that does not even cause more hyponatremia. Now, unfortunately, most of these diuretics, they let the sodium, they cause hyponatremia. You know why? It's part of their mechanism of action, right? They prevent the reabsorption of the sodium, so that sodium stays in the urine. The urine gets more concentrated. The osmolality of the urine is higher, so then it attracts the water, and that's how water gets, excreted. And that's how the mechanism works with most of the diuretics. With this one, it does not affect the, the level of the sodium, so it is preferred if somebody has hyponatremia. Okay. Okay, next one, exercise number 2. Let's see, team number 6, spironolactone. What do you think? Spironolactone, is it the longest duration of action? Which one has the longest duration of action? Indapamide. What is the duration of action of indapamide? 8 weeks, right? So what is the right answer for spironolactone? C. It is most potent in its class, yet it is least selective. Okay, so that's why you'll have more side effects with the spironolactone than the eplerenone, which is, comparing the same class. Okay, we already answered indapamide, which has the longest duration of action, 8 weeks. Now, what is the mechanism? Let's see, team number 10. Did you guys answer any? No. So you did? So you did the one for, no, we're still talking about indapamide. Okay, so indapamide is the longest duration of action. Why is indapamide has the longest duration of action? What is the mechanism by which it will have the longest duration of action? I'll get to you, Melody. So we all know that indapamide has the longest duration of action. It has 8 weeks duration of action. So why is that? So generally, when you have something that has a long duration of action, what is the reason? It's mainly lipophilicity, but in this case, it is not the case. Okay. So what's the reason indapamide has the longest duration of action? It's not irreversible. That's a good way of thinking, though. So, I like the way you're thinking. It's not the right way though. So you guys, good. I mean, I'm glad you're giving all these guns because it's either lipophilicity or the metabolite is active, or you have a drug that binds irreversibly to the receptor that blocks it forever. In this example, it's similar to the lipophilicity, but it's not binding to the fatty tissues. It's binding to something else and is staying there for a long time before it's released. Huh? Not the proteins. I still like this way of thinking here. It binds to the carbonic anhydrase in the red blood cells, okay? So it binds to the red blood cells, to the carbonic anhydrase, and apparently it binds strongly to these carbonic anhydrase such that it stays longer in the body, okay? Make sense, guys? So do you think, what about the volume of distribution for edemaride? What do you think of the volume of distribution? Will you have a high or low volume of distribution? Excellent, you got it now, good. Okay, so the next one is, that's okay. So furosemide, oh, I'm sorry, Melody, you had a question, yes. Yes, okay, so guys, when we compare spironolactone, when you compare spironolactone with eplerenone, both are in the same class, right? One of them is more potent than the other, one of them is more selective. Now, how is selectivity and potency related to each other? Normally, when you have the more selective, it's the more potent, right? I mean, the more potent is the more selective, right? But in this one, it's the opposite, okay? That's mean, that's what I know. Okay, so normally when we design a drug, remember earlier in this session, I mentioned the conflict between pharmacologists and medicinal chemists, right? So pharmacologists like to think that if a drug is more potent, it is less selective. Medicinal chemists like to think that if it's more potent, then it is more selective, okay? So, and the reason has to do with the way, both sides think. So as a medicinal chemist, I like to think when I design a drug and I enhance its potency or affinity to the receptor, then I'm only looking at that receptor. I design it in a way that it binds strongly only to that receptor. So when I have a high potency or affinity, then I assume the drug is more selective, okay? Pharmacologists say, well, if the drug has a high affinity, they don't look at the receptor. If the drug has a high affinity, then it's likely to bind other receptors, so it is least selective, okay? It's just two different perspectives, and this is science. You will see things like that. So in this case, selectivity and potency, they are not related. You have a drug that is more, you have spironolactone, which is more potent, yet it is less selective, and you will have side effects. So pharmacologists win in this case, okay? I know what you're thinking now. So in the exam, what's gonna yeah, no. So I mean, just know the examples, okay? And then in this example in particular, indeed, spironolactone, although it is more potent, but it is least selective, okay? The other one, eplerenone, with the epoxy group, okay, the drug became more selective to the its receptor, but it is less potent. Okay? Any questions about this? No? Okay, you already talked about indapamide. Okay, furosemide, let's see. Team number 2, furosemide. Exactly, avoid in postmenopausal osteopenic women. Why is that? It causes hypocalcemia, right? So you lose calcium. Last one, the canivaptan. Let's see, team number 11. See, that's the easiest one because it's the last one. D, it's IV only, okay? However, the newer ones can be given orally. Can you name a new one that's given orally? The tolvaptan. Okay. Any questions about this so far? Let me just take one question just to be sure, and then we'll move to the next exercise. Questions? Well, let me check. If you got this 100%, can you raise your hand? Okay, good. So let's move to the next exercise. Okay, so the next one is a multiple choice. It says, how was the non-selectivity issue encountered in carbonic anhydrase inhibitor overcome for treating glaucoma? So in the case of glaucoma, we wanted to use a carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, but we had issues with the selectivity. So for this case, to make the drug selective, how did we treat glaucoma? I mean, so look at the options and then we will discuss. Melody, you have a question? Yes, so, right. So only focus on the ones we talked about and the features of that we discussed in class, okay? So, for example, in the readings, you will see that some drugs causes hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, whatever. There are many ways how these drugs can affect electrolytes. It's purely memorization. So I picked some of the examples that I think are more relevant and will help you understand the concept. So when we say, for example, that the Vaptans, they cause they do not affect electrolytes, then this is the reason why we use them in cases of hyponatremia. Okay. So the concept itself, when you know somebody has hyponatremia, you should not give these diuretics that causes, again, hyponatremia. So you would go with an option that does not affect electrolytes. Make sense? So I picked also on the furosemide that should be avoided in osteoporosis because, again, they cause hypocalcemia. Okay, so only focus on these examples we mentioned in the RAT, in the applications, application exercises in today's lecture. So if you're not sure, just send me an email and then I will share it with everyone, okay? If you're not sure if you should know all these side effects of these drugs or you should memorize them or not, please send me an email and I will share the answer with everyone, okay? Sounds good? You have a question, Kendra? Okay. All right, so let's start with exercise number 3. I'll give you, let's say, 5 minutes, okay? And then we'll discuss. Are you ready to share your answers, guys? Ready? Okay. So get your cards. At the count of 3, show me your answer. You didn't have the cards. Okay, that's fine. Let's do it a different way. I don't want to disturb. It's okay. I'll do it in a different way. So how many of you got A as an answer? Raise your hand. Shh. How many got A as an answer? How many got B as an answer? How many got C as an answer? Okay, and how many got D as an answer? Nobody. Okay, so it's between B and C. So congratulations, you are normal people, right? You're confused, you get confused, which is the purpose of this exercise. So it's between increasing the, the water solubility and changing the route of administration. Why is that? Okay, so let's talk history, okay? Although I hate teaching history. So historically, the first carbonic anhydrase inhibitor discovered was the acetazolamide, okay? Yet they had some issues with its ability to cross the gut wall because it was not lipophilic enough, okay? So they added this CH3 group here to make it more lipophilic, okay? So now the drug can be taken orally and can cross the gut wall. Yet these carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, they are not selective. The carbonic anhydrase enzyme is present in many places in the body. So anytime you take something orally or systemically, it guess what? It attacks all these enzymes all over the body, and then you get many side effects. But the drug is good in the case of glaucoma. So they wanted to design a drug and treat glaucoma, but not worry about the side effects systemically. So whenever you have something that you could apply topically and you could avoid the systemic side effect, then you do that, right? So they designed the drug to be administered as an ophthalmic solution. Now, speaking of solution, it should be more water soluble, okay? So they had to modify the drug and add some amide group here, amino groups, to make it able to form ionized and ionized charges. Okay, so they added a group that is more polar to make the drug more soluble in the ophthalmic solution. Why is that? Because remember when we talked about eye drops, you can only give 1 drop in the eye, and in the case to give the enough amount of the drug, it should be concentrated. In order to give concentrated drug, then you should make it more water soluble. Okay, so you want to increase the water solubility, and at the same time, you still want to maintain some of the lipophilicity such that the drug can, cross the, the eye, whatever wall layer that is called, cross that into inside the eye and cause the effect. Okay, so we had 2 conflicting, factors. In the case of the oral administration, we wanted something more lipophilic, and we added the CH3. But then now we solved the problem of selectivity by making the drug taken as an ophthalmic solution. In the case of the solution, you need the drug to be more water soluble. So then you add these polar ionized groups. Okay. So what is the right answer in this case would be? Both, increasing. What is the most correct answer? C. Okay. So the most correct answer would be changing the route of administration. That's how they solved selectivity. Now, I mean, yes, we did increase the water solubility, but this is not to solve the selectivity issue. We increased the water solubility to be able to give a concentrated amount of the drug in 1 drop. Okay, so you got it, everyone? Okay. Questions about this? If you got this 100%, can you raise your hand? Okay, excellent. The next exercise is a drug-drug interaction. And like I said, anytime I see a chance to talk about the drug interaction, I will list an example just for you to practice more and more, okay? So we have administered eplerenone with ketoconazole. What do you expect is gonna happen? And you have the table already. We already talked about eplerenone being metabolized by CYP3A4, and ketoconazole is a potent inhibitor of the CYP3A4. So what happens to the drug? You get, overdose of the eplerenone. So A would be the right answer. Okay. Oh yes, yeah, we just did exercise number 4. So exercise number 4, I think, is just a straightforward question, very simple. Talks about drug interactions between two drugs, eplerenone and ketoconazole. Okay, so you should be able to find this quickly. Shouldn't take that. It's not a prodrug. No, eplerenone is not a prodrug. Okay. Okay. Now the next one, before we finish exercise 5 and 6, I need to explain to you the table of the sulfonamide selectivity. So guys, yes sir. What was what? I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, so sulfonamide allergies. Guys, how many times in the pharmacy you have seen someone who says, I have sulfa allergy? And they try to ask you, does this drug have sulfa? And then you look at the bottle and you see, for example, morphine sulfate. And you think, oh, it has sulfate, so do not take this, okay? Or you take an antibiotic and it causes allergy, and then the next time you want to take a diuretic, which has a sulfa, then you might think, well, I cannot take sulfa drugs. So it's important that you know that whenever we refer to the term sulfa, there's actually different sulfonamide function groups, okay? So there is what's called aryl amine sulfonamide, okay, which are these are present in the antibiotic sulfonamide, okay? So the chemical term is aryl amine sulfonamide, but for simplicity, we'll refer to them as antibiotic sulfonamides, okay? And the other term is non-aryl amine sulfonamide, which is, we'll call them non-antibiotic sulfonamides, okay? Now, among the aryl amine sulfonamide, the antibiotic, we have 2 classes of antibiotic, mainly the antibacterial, but we also have the antiviral, and there are some examples in the chart. So these cross-react with each other, okay? Which means if you're allergic to one of these drugs that are antibiotic or antiviral, then you should avoid anything within that class, okay? The other class, which is the non-aryl amine, they vary. They have different classes. I put them in the table in blue boxes. Can someone give me like the table so I could use? No, not this one. Sorry, the table in the notes. Thank you. I forgot to bring my note. Okay. And these are not my writings, by the way. Whatever she says, it's on her own, okay? Okay, so these are aryl amine. How can I tell from the structure that it's an aryl amine? Aryl means aromatic. Amine, it has an H2, okay? Anytime you have aryl amine, then it's among the aryl amine sulfonamide. If you check all these, you will see that there's an aromatic with an H2, aromatic and H2 on all of these, okay? So these are the antibiotics. They could be antibacterial or they could be antiviral. Okay, guys? So you look at the arylamine sulfonamide on the other hand, on the other table, and you have the sulfonamide antiretroviral. Examples are amprenavir, fosamprenavir, and the sulfonamide antibiotic. Before you ask, this table will be given to you in the exam, okay? This same table. So you only need to know how to use it, okay? So the sulfonamide, arylamine, the ones that has arylamine are either antibacterial or antiviral. These, they cross-react. If someone is allergic to one of them, to one of these antibiotics, then they should avoid all of them, all antibacterial, antiviral, okay? On the other hand, the non-arylamine, they are subclassified into other groups, and only those within the blue boxes here, they cross-react. So all these are non-arylamine, okay? So if you can pay close attention, this is this box which has arylamine sulfonamide, and there is this box that has non-arylamine sulfonamide. Within the non-arylamine, carbonic anhydrase, they cross-react with each other, but they do not cross-react with the other box, blue box, okay? The sulfonylurea, which is, the diuretics, they cross-react with each other, okay? And then we have the loop diuretics, thiazide-like and thiazide diuretics. These three classes, they cross-react with each other, okay? And then finally, we have this by itself, celecoxib, and we have other groups by themselves that are sulfa, but they are separate. They don't cross-react with any of these here or any of the antibiotics. Make sense, guys? I know I have to say it again. Yes, Maria. Excellent. So the simplest way to think about this is the blue box. So look at the blue box. Anything within the blue box, they cross-react. We cannot give someone who's allergic to a drug within the blue box, drugs within. Yes. So if a drug is in this box here, somebody's allergic to a drug here, then you can give it. Then you can give a drug outside, such as any of these. Okay. So think of as the blue box as the drugs that they can cross-react. If you look at them closely, then you will see that the first one is the antibiotic, the sulfonamide, the arylamine sulfonamide or antibiotic sulfonamides. You will see inside this box the antibacterial, antiviral, okay? And then we have other boxes which are non-arylamine, okay? Here is some examples, okay? And these are subcategorized or subclassified into, other blue boxes. So within the same blue box, drugs cross-react. Outside, they don't. Make sense? Maria? What do you think? Yes, exactly, you can. That's why, guys, when somebody is allergic to, sulfa, they come to the pharmacy, they say allergic to sulfa, then you should ask them for their history. You could tell them, well, why do you think you're allergic to sulfa? What happened? Tell me what drug you took. And then based on that, you could decide if they can take another sulfa drug or not. Make sense? Most likely, it's the antibiotic sulfonamide that people get allergic to, okay? I had one time associate who worked with me at the pharmacy, and she would not even count an antibiotic for sulfonamide, believe it or not. If she gets near, a prescription that has sulfonamide, she gets allergic. This is how sensitive she was, okay? So anytime we get a prescription for sulfonamide, instead of you should give it to someone else. She cannot count it or get close to it. Anyway, so many people, they will come to the pharmacy, they tell you, I'm allergic to the sulfonamide, and guess what? I have the morphine sulfate. So these are salts, guys. Morphine sulfates, these are salts. They are not arylamine sulfonamide, so they can take that. Or they'll bring to you, an over-the-counter product that has sulfate, salt. You got it, guys? This is important, okay? Because yes, Kevin. Yes, if they are, unless they were allergic to that salt. So think of you could add another blue box and say the salts, for example, the sulfa, like the sulfate, for example, salt. Yes. So yeah, I mean, I probably have to check whether, small differences can make them cross-react or not. But think of the salts which are used to make these drugs, morphine sulfate, codeine sulfate, and over-the-counter drugs, sulfate, as a different blue box, separate from anything else. Okay. So your goal is to ask them first to know which drug they've been allergic to, okay, and then decide if they can take this one or not. Make sense? Okay, so let's practice this on these practice exercises. So exercise number 5 and 6, I know you need a break. Let's just finish this and then take a break and start with the next part of the applications, okay? So look at exercise 5 and 6, and you should be able to nail it in 5 minutes now since you know what the table looks like, okay? So do exercise 5 and 6 in 5 minutes. Thank you, Mike. And we'll look at the answers really quick. So as I answer the questions, many people get confused. It's very simple. Why did it take that long to explain it? And no, right? It's very simple. Just look at that table, at the table, which will be provided to you, and things within the blue box cross-react, outside they don't. Okay. Okay. So now let's look at the answers. So somebody is allergic to bumetanide, which is circled in the box here. Can they take mannitol? Yes. Sumatriptan, furosemide, acetazolamide, hydrochlorothiazide, sulfamethoxazole, spironolactone, indapamide, glyburide, celecoxib, ithacrenic acid. Okay, now ithacrenic acid is among the loop diuretics, right? But remember, it's actually not a sulfa, okay? So just like the example you've seen here, bumetanide is a loop diuretic, and although ithacrenic acid is a loop diuretic, but ithacrenic acid is not sulfa. Okay, the next one, somebody is allergic to the fosemprenavir, which is antiviral. So that's an antibiotic, right? So can they take the sulfasalazine? Okay, excellent. Can they take ithacrenic acid, spironolactone, mannitol? I'm not going by order. But hydrochlorothiazide, amiloride, sulfamethazine, furosemide, indapamide. Congratulations, you got it. Yes. Say it again.
This second part is based on the assumption that patient is taking one drug at a time, not one combination. Because
Yes, one at a time.
because I was going to say, because in the mind is
Okay. Let's take let's take a break and come back at 10:50. Okay, and we will start with the next set of applications for the ACE, ACE inhibitors, all that. In the meantime, I see people have questions, so I'll just answer them in the break. Okay, so let's start by the next application. Okay, guys, so go ahead and start with the first application, which should make sense, just related to each other. Basically, the mechanism of action of the ACE inhibitors, the major interactions, binding sites, and how the enzyme, what kind of enzyme inhibitor is this? Apparently, it's a transition state inhibitor. And why does stereochemistry matter? So start with exercise number 1, and then we'll discuss. Guys, I just want to point out something on the table. As you have noticed, this one here, sulfamethazine, it is not listed among the sulfonamide antibiotics, but it is sulfonamide antibiotics, okay? So, anytime you have sulfonamide antibiotics, even though it's not listed in the table, then they will cross-react. Now, you will be given both, so you don't have to worry about other things outside the table. This is one thing. The other thing is, some of you have noticed that torsemide is actually a loop diuretic, right? But it's listed with the sulfonylurea. The reason is the structure of the sulfa group in the torsemide belongs to the sulfonylurea, okay? In fact, this is one of the things that previous class caught. They were looking at the structures and they said the torsemide has the sulfonylurea feature. So it makes sense to list it with the sulfonylureas. Now, in theory, torsemide is sulfonylurea, so it should belong to this box. I looked at some, I tried to find some data to support that torsemide would cross-react with the sulfonylureas or whether it would cross-react with the loop diuretics. I could not find any. So, this is why we learn basic sciences to rationalize and then hopefully support with data. I couldn't find any data to support whether torsemide can be here or here. So this is just something to think about, okay? Finally, the last point is on the sulfasalazine, okay? If you look at these structures, they all have the aryl amine, which is, an aryl, aromatic, and amine. The sulfasalazine does not. But what happens is the sulfasalazine, once it's absorbed, it's actually hydrolyzed, and the double bond here is converted to NH2 on both sides, and then it will give you this antibiotic. Actually, I'm sorry, it will belong to this class of antibiotics. So the sulfasalazine is among the sulfonamide antibiotics. This is why the arrow here, and I did not want to list it here to bring the discussion of even though it's not an amine, but this double bond will break and it will be converted to an aryl amine. Okay, confused enough? Excellent. Okay, so don't worry about this exception, torsemide. And when you have the table, you will know that the antibiotic sulfamethoxazole, sulfamethazine is among the antibiotics, even though it's not on the table. And sulfasalazine is just an exception. It breaks into here. So just follow the arrow, okay? But these are exceptions that I normally avoid, if you're worried about the exam. But, conceptually, these 3 examples should make sense, hopefully. If you have, we're not gonna waste time on that. If you have questions about this, we can talk about in the discussion, okay? Okay, so go back to exercise you have, and we'll discuss in like maybe 5 minutes or so. Are you guys ready? I need more time. Ready? I need more time. Need more time. Ready? What? More time? Okay. So at 11:05. Yeah. Okay, I assume you're ready now. Okay, let's go through the questions. Okay, so describe how the enzyme ACE cleaves angiotensin 1 into 2 and the location of the cleavage. So as we know, angiotensin 1 is a protein, as in the figure there, and it's broken. So angiotensin 1 has 10 amino acids. Then it's broken into 8 amino acids to give you angiotensin 2. Now, where this split occur, where does angiotensin 1 loses these 2 amino acids? Here, right? Between 8 and 9. Okay? So instead of having 10, now you have 8 amino acids. Okay? Everybody get that? Okay. And the next part is, well, before I answer this next part, so in the design of a drug that inhibits the enzyme, the idea was to mimic these amino acids on both sides of the split. Let me explain this here. So, this is where we split the amino acids. So the design of the drug relied on mimicking the 4 amino acids in here. Why is that? Say it again. Oh, the question? Okay. So this is where the enzyme split the chain, right? It breaks down the bond between amino acid number 8 and 9, okay? Now, can you think of a way to design a drug to inhibit this enzyme? Mimic the amino acids, right? So they picked 4 amino acids, 2 on the right side, 2 on the left side, and they designed a drug to mimic these 4 amino acids that just disappeared, okay? And this is a strategy that they use very often. You will see that in antiviral as well, okay? So if I know that there's a protein, if I know that an enzyme works on certain point in the protein, then one way to block this enzyme is to design a drug that mimics the part where the enzyme works on, right? Now, why did we choose 4? Why did we choose like only 2? They found that these 4 are the ones that are mostly interacting with the enzyme, okay? If you go outside to 6 or 5, then these are not being interacting with the binding site of the enzyme, okay? Make sense, guys? You got this point? So you mimic the part of the protein or peptide that you're gonna break. So you design a drug that mimics these 4, and this drug should compete with the peptide and block the enzyme, bind to the enzyme and block it, prevent it from further breaking down angiotensin 1. Now, can I just pick these 4 amino acids and use them instead? In theory, can I do that? If I only pick these 4 amino acids and use them as a drug, would they not bind to the enzyme? Yes or no? They should. Why did we not do that? Why do you just pick those 4 amino acids and use them? Huh? It's peptides. So 4 amino acids, that's a peptide, right? What's the problem with using peptide as a drug? What's the problem if using insulin as a drug? It has to be taken by injection. It cannot be taken orally. I mean, you can pick these 4 and design a drug and give it subcutaneously, but who's gonna buy your drug? If you have a drug that could be taken orally, then why not? Then why, try to sell something that could be taken by injection? You see the point? Okay, so this answers part B, which is why did we not use the 4 amino acids here as a drug? Because they are peptides. Peptides, if we use them, then we can only give them by injection, like the insulin. If we take them orally, they will be broken by the enzymes of the stomach and the acid of the stomach, okay? So it's not a good way. So they modified these 4 amino acids, or they designed a drug that mimics these 4 amino acids, but modified it to enhance its activity and make it more stable. Basically, avoid making it a peptide. So make something that's not a peptide, okay? And then we are talking about the major interactions at between these 4 peptides and the amino, and the enzyme. So this figure here shows the examples of the interactions. If you look at them, you have what type of interaction here? So first of all, these are the 4 amino acids, right? Proline here, phenylalanine here, histidine, and leucine. Okay, 4 amino acids. So if you study how these 4 amino acids interact with the enzyme, then we can hopefully design a drug that mimics that. Okay, the interactions are what type of interactions here? Ionic here, hydrogen bond here, hydrophobic van der Waals, and then here. This is something we have not seen many examples of. It's a dipole ion interaction. Yet during the transition state, so this is when the drug binds to the enzyme. Now during the transition state, this here will form C O- and OH, and the O- will form ionic with the zinc. Anyway, you don't have to overthink much about this. Basically, looking at the structure of these amino acids, okay, they were able to design something that mimics this and use these pockets. Remember the extra binding regions? Remember the concept of designing an antagonist where we have extra binding regions? So these extra binding regions, they were used to enhance the binding affinity for these drugs. So they modified the the drugs to produce all these captopril, enalapril, lisinopril, and all these drugs that can still form the same interactions. If you check them all, they should still form the same interactions, okay? Yet they are not peptides anymore, okay? And then based on this group here, we had 3 different classes of drugs, okay? So we had the carboxylate, which is the majority of them had carboxylate, okay? And we had the SH. Which one has the SH? Captopril. We had a problem with the captopril, okay? And then we had the phosphate. Which one has the phosphate group? Phosphenipril. It's from the name. Phosphenipril has a phosphate. Okay, so we had one example on the group that has phosphate, which is phosphenipril. We have one example on the group that has the sulfhydryl, which is captopril, with the many side effects. And the rest of these ACE inhibitors use the carboxylates. So to summarize, this is how the drug was designed. We picked these 4 amino acids, we looked at the interaction with the enzymes, and then we mimicked these 4 amino acids, make sure the same interactions are there. And then one of the groups, the carboxylate, we modified it one time with the sulfate, one time with the phosphate. So these groups are called, what did we call groups that retain activity, but then they are different groups? Isosteres. And since the activity retained in these groups, they are called now bioisosteres. Okay? Right, questions? I see lots of confused faces. So what kind of inhibition is this? Remember when you talked about the enzyme inhibitors, what mechanism did we use? The transition state inhibitors, right? They mimic the transition state of how this angiotensin is broken down, okay? And before we start taking questions about this, why is the stereochemistry matter? So when we design amino acids, they come in the levo or the dextro. I mean, when our body naturally design amino acids, do they come in the levo or the dextro? Levo. So if you design an amino acid if you use the dextro form, guess what? Then can the enzyme still recognize them? Okay, so start all over. Angiotensin, for example, is a protein that our body synthesizes. It's made of amino acids. These amino acids are in the dextro or levo form, levo. Okay. Now remember when we said that we want to design a drug that mimics the 4 amino acids? If I pick these 4 amino acids and modify these amino acids, instead of having them levo, I use the dextro. Then our body is not going to able, I guess the ACE enzyme is not going to recognize these amino acids, okay, and will not be able to break them, which is one of the techniques we could use to solve the problem of giving a peptide, okay? Say that you really have to give a peptide and you're worried that it's going to be broken by some enzyme, okay? So one way to stabilize it is to switch, the dextro and levo, because naturally our body synthesizes amino acids in the levo form. If you make the amino acids in the dextro, then our body is not going to be able to recognize them; they'll not be broken. Problem is when you do that, what happens to the conformation of the structure? It's different now, so the drug might not be active anymore. Okay, let me take questions to clear this confusion. I know you have many questions, so speak up. Yes. Part B. Okay, so why did we not use these 4 amino acids, cut them and just use them? See? Okay, the three major interactions. So based on this structure, what are the three major interactions? One in red here. This is one. Okay. This is two. This is three. These are the three major interactions. Now we have extra binding regions here in red. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 3, 1, 2, 3 extra binding regions. These could be used to enhance the binding to the enzyme, okay? Are you confused or sleepy? Both? So we have three chemical classes of the ACE inhibitors. What are they? Sulfhydryl, carboxylate, and phosphonate, right? Where did this come from? It's from this function group here that causes the ionic interaction. So we have three different groups that we select from. Carboxylate, which is the majority of them. Phosphonate, we have the phosphonyl, and the sulfhydryl, which is captopril. Okay. Questions? So why does stereochemistry matter when you design a drug that mimics an amino acid? So because our body makes amino acids in one way, if we make it the other way, it's not going to be recognized. Okay, good. Well, if you didn't ask questions, I'm going to move to the next part. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, the carbonyl, yeah. Yes, what, say again? Oh, what's it called? Excellent. So this is not something we have seen a lot. It's this is a dipole part of the molecule. This is ionic. So there is a one type of interaction called dipole ion interaction. Okay. Now once this drug goes into the next step in the breakdown, in the transition state, that you will see that this form here will become ionized. It will have CO minus and then COH, and the O minus will form ionic with the zinc. Okay? Yes, Nadia. Okay, so amino acids are made in our body in the levo form, which means that enzymes that break these amino acids assume that they are in the levo form. If we make peptides in the dextro form, enzymes will not be able to recognize them. So this is one way to make a peptide and prevent it from being metabolized. Okay? Assuming that we don't lose the activity, because sometimes when you modify an amino acid from dextro to levo, what happens to the positions of this group in space? They are going to be located in a different space. Remember in the first few lectures, we wanted to stress the importance of the R and S, okay? Because R will position groups in different position, the S will position them in a different position. When they bind to the receptor, one of them might be active, the other one won't. Okay. Do I need to get someone here explain these again? Yeah? Okay. Volunteers? No pressure, Adishola. Any volunteers? Somebody can explain this whole thing? Huh? You have a question? What is it? Say it again. Oh, transition state? Okay. Can we do this after class?
Oh yeah.
Sure. Okay. Because yeah. So we can look at the transition state. Come on, guys, volunteers. You can do it. You want to do it, Adishola? Yeah, come on in. Applause. I just did not want to put the pressure on you because you always.
Okay, so the goal is we're trying to make a drug that would work like that would be recognized by the ACE enzyme in the body. And we're trying to make it such that it will mimic the protein, this protein. And the only way we can do that is by designing a drug such that it's gonna mimic the last 4 amino acids in the protein, which is 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we did this because what happens is that the enzyme converts or changes angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 by cleaving between 8 and 9. So in designing this, we looked at this structure here. Okay, such that the goal is such that the enzyme can recognize what we're trying to mimic. And we looked at the interaction between the amino acids and the enzyme, such that each of the amino acid, this is proline, this is phenylalanine, this is histidine, and this is leucine. They have a way they're interacting with the enzyme. The first one here is the interaction of the oxygen and the carboxylic part of the leucine and the enzyme, the NH2 in the enzyme. The second one is the interaction between the hydrogen bond of the enzyme and the carbonyl group in the histidine. The third one is the interaction between the carboxyl group of phenylalanine and the zinc of the enzyme. So we designed a drug. This is the designed drug now. We designed a drug such that it will mimic this arrangement so that there will be interaction between the drug and this enzyme when the drug is taken in the body, so that the enzyme can recognize the drug and it will perform its function. And Dr. Khashan was saying that the reason we try to, considering the stereoisomerism of the drug now, it could be levo or dextro. The body recognizes the levo isomer of the drug. So we want to make sure that we design the drug so that it's going to be in the levo form, not in the dextro form, so that the enzyme can recognize it. And we did not design the drug in the peptide form, because if you take it, if you design the peptide form and it's taken through in the stomach, the enzyme in the stomach is going to break down the bond, and then instead of having the amino acid peptide linkage, we're going to be having, instead of having the protein with the peptide linkage, we're going to be having individual amino acid, because the bond would have been broken down and it won't achieve its result. So the goal is design a drug that is not in the form of protein, but that would have the structure such that it to be recognized by the enzyme in the body being in the levo stereoisomerism.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So you get this 100% now? Can you raise your hand if you get this 100%? Okay. You have a question, John?
Okay, although, I mean, I'm not sure if I got this part right, that on the levo versus dextro, I thought you were saying that potentially it's a possibility that you could design a dextro peptide, but at the same time, that would possibly block the enzyme, but at the same time, that doesn't always work because they may not interact. So designing a dextro amino acid peptide or peptide analog may or may not work. Sometimes it'll inhibit your enzyme. Sometimes it won't even interact with your enzyme.
Right. So using a dextro is one way to avoid the drug being metabolized, but assuming that it's going to work, because if it's used in the dextro form, it might not even bind to the receptor. I'm just talking about ways of stabilizing a peptide. Yeah. Melody?
My question was just, I understood that. That was really good.
Uh-huh.
My question was, so then is the point of the ACE inhibitor, you're trying to keep the enzyme busy so it's not working on that pathway?
Excellent, thank you. Yes. So the ACE enzyme breaks down angiotensin 1 into 2. My goal is to block this enzyme. So I'm looking where in the angiotensin does the enzyme work, and then mimic that part such that enzyme will be busy with the drug and then it will be inhibited. Kevin? Yes, so when we talked about the stereochemistry, it's two separate techniques. I mentioned the drug itself, but the drug itself is not amino acid. I just wanted to throw, in the idea of whenever we want to design a drug that mimics a peptide, it's a problem, but there are solutions. One of them is making a drug, or if you want to keep it as a peptide, one way is to make it, in the dextro instead of levo. John?
Do pancreatic enzymes recognize dextro?
I'm not sure about that. So do pancreatic recognize dextro? I'm not sure. I know where you're going with though. No, but I don't have the answer. Insulin, right? Yeah. Kendra? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Excellent, yes. So you want to design a drug that mimics the part where the enzyme work at, such that the enzyme will be occupied, busy with it, and that doesn't mess up the angiotensin 1. This way we inhibit the conversion of angiotensin 1 into 2. Great questions. All right, let me try now. If you get this 100%, raise your hand. It's like, no. Right. Okay, we can talk about this in the review if you're still not sure, okay? Okay, so let's move to the next exercise. Exercise number 2. Oh, we already talked about this in the rat. So which part of the captopril, the sulfhydryl, what are the unfavorable effects? Skin rash, taste disturbances, or metallic taste, or loss of taste. And then it has short duration of action because they form dimers, so they become inactive. Right. Number 3. So size number 3, we talks about the product design. So take 5 minutes and look at these questions, number 3, and then we'll discuss them together, okay? You have a question? Yes, ma'am. Yes. 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 Okay, so guys, I spoke with Amanda. You guys have Amanda coming here at 12 o'clock talking about speeches. I checked with her. She said it's going to take no more than 30 minutes. Okay, so she will come in 30 minutes, and then I will come here and talk about the, CAT questions, review the CAT questions. Okay? Say it again. Okay, so I can send them in the 30 minutes. I'll go back to my office and send them to you, okay? So start with exercise number 3. Once we finish 3, hopefully we'll have some time to visit any issues you had with today's lecture, okay? Yes, Gerald. Mhm. Okay, so the first part talks about what's the purpose of esterifying. We already talked about that. So why do we esterify? Why do you use the ester? And the enalapril increase absorption, solubility, or basically cross the gut wall. And then where do these ACE inhibitors get basically activated, converted into the active form? In the liver. Okay, so what does that tell us if somebody has a liver dysfunction? We should avoid these drugs. Okay, now there's an exception. One of these ACE inhibitors, the fosinipril, is activated by which enzyme? Fosinipril phosphatase. Okay, the phosphatase is actually present in the intestinal wall as well as the liver. So if the liver is not functioning, then you could still use fosinipril because it can be activated as it gets absorbed and cross the gut wall. Over there is phosphatase enzymes that they could actually activate the drug. Make sense? Okay. Also, there are other drugs, the ARBs. Some of them are prodrugs, right? Have you noticed? Some of them are prodrugs that are activated by esterase enzymes. These are also can be activated by esterase enzymes in the intestinal wall. Now, esterase enzymes, they are not all one kind. Esterase enzymes have many kinds. Some of them are present in the plasma, others in the liver, others in the intestinal wall. And it depends on the type of ester group that some enzymes will work on one drug but not the other. So our goal, the key point, is to know where these prodrugs get activated. If they get activated in the liver and we have somebody with hepatic dysfunction, then avoid these drugs. Make sense? And then part C is something we talked about in CAT1 when we had enalapril and enalaprilat. And we mentioned that one of them, if you want to give the drug IV, like in hospital, then you are not required to use the prodrug. We actually use the active form, which is enalaprilat. Finally, so why did we not esterify the lisinopril? It's because of this chain here that there's a hypothesis that says the positive here charge. So it has a lysine amino acid, or the portion of the amino acid lysine that has a positive charge that neutralizes the negative charge, and these two also neutralizes each other. So after all, the molecule will have a zero charge, and that's why it's absorbed through the gut wall. We did not have to make it as a prodrug. So we really talked about all these in the rat. The only thing we did not talk about was this part, the activation in the liver, and just paying attention to which enzyme activate these prodrugs. And if it's in the liver, then you want to make sure we do not have hepatic dysfunction. So I will share these answers. Sometimes I have answers for the applications, sometimes I don't. So I will share them anyway. And if the answers are there, then you're lucky. If not, you're still lucky, right? Because you're still going to study them and find the answers by yourself. Okay, so this concludes today's lecture. Let's see any questions about this exercise, about the prodrugs. Any issues with this one? No? Okay. Okay, well, let's see if you have any issues about anything in today's lecture. So take your time, go through the notes, and we could review anything we have, because today we'll have to review the CAT. So when I come back at 12:30, we'll go through the questions of the CAT, okay? So any questions about today's lecture? So which pathway is the most efficient? Is it renin inhibitors or ACE inhibitors or it's RI? Why is that? Because they block the pathway much earlier before anything else, right? So in the case of the ACE inhibitors, there are still some other pathways that the angiotensin can be converted into angiotensin 2, so they're not really that efficient, okay? The same with the ARBs, they bind to, angiotensin, convert to the receptors 1 and 2, but the most efficient way is to block renin enzyme. This way, nothing will pass through that point because it's like critical to all the other paths. Okay, paths. So why did we classify the sulfonamide drugs, as arylamine, non-arylamine, and sub-categorize the non-arylamine further? Huh? I mean, you could memorize them and say, these are the ones inside the box. I should avoid cross-react. But what is it inside these groups that makes cross-reactivity? They share the same structure of the sulfonamide, right? So if you look at the furosemide and the loop diuretics, they have similar sulfonamide structure. That's why they cross-react. If you look at for example, the sulfonylurea, you will see that they have similar sulfonamide structure. So it's actually, the reason these were classified this way is because they share the same sulfonamide structure. If you move from one box to another, then it's still a sulfonamide, but it's a different type of sulfonamide, okay? If you look at the antibiotics, the antibacterial, antiviral, they are arylamine sulfonamide, okay? Hey. Questions? So antibiotics, both antibacterial and antiviral, they have basically the same structure, which is the arylamine sulfonamide. They share the same structural feature, okay? So guys, actually, so let's take 10 minutes break and then come back at 11:55 because Amanda's going to start, talking about, the speeches, whatever that is, okay? So just come back at 11:55, okay? And then I'll come back at 12:30 to continue discussion and talk about the rats. Deal? Okay, and it's okay, bring their lunch with them. And you can bring your lunch with you to the room if you want to, okay?